Let's start off with the MCQs straight away. Question number 1. Selling price of the product is $50. Markup is 25%. Please note the term markup. It's markup and not margin. Direct material cost estimated at $24. That is before shrinkage at the rate of 20%. Direct labor hours required per unit is 1 hour. Calculate direct labor rate per hour so that the target cost gap is 0. So whenever you get a problem on target costing, please arrange the data from the question in the format that you have studied in the previous class. So the format appears like this. We have the selling price and we reduce the markup to get the target cost. Then we calculate the estimated cost. And the target cost gap is the estimated cost minus the target cost. Now the target cost is equated to 100 because it is the markup which is given in the question. So now we will get to the details of the question. The first detail is selling price is $50. So against selling price, we will write $50 and markup is 25%. Now, we have equated the target cost to $100. So if the target cost is $100 and if we want to make a markup of 25%, markup is always calculated on cost. So 25% of $100, so the markup is also $25. So we have assumed the target cost at $100 and we have calculated the markup at the rate of 25%, that is $100 into 25%. Which will give an amount of $25. And the selling price is always target cost plus markup, which means that 100 plus 25, that's equal to 125. So this is the mathematical relationship between the target cost, the markup, and the selling price if we assume that the target cost is $100. Now we will work out the missing figures. Now we know that selling price is equal to $50. Selling price is equal to 125%. So what is a markup? Markup is $50 divided by 125 into 25. So the markup amounts to $10. Now what is the target cost? Target cost is selling price minus markup, or it's $50 minus $10, giving an amount of $40. So that part is complete. Now we move to the estimated cost. The estimated cost, they have said direct material cost is estimated at $24. So we will make a note of that. Direct material cost estimated at $24 per unit. But there is a small problem. What is the problem? It is before shrinkage at the rate of 20%, which means that if we buy the direct material for an amount of $24, it will shrink. Shrink to the extent of how much? 20%, which means that we will get only 80% of the required quantity of raw materials. But we don't want 80% of the raw materials. We want the full 100%. So how much quantity of raw material should we buy? $24 is equal to 80%, which means that 100% will be equal to $24 divided by 80 into 100, giving an amount of $30. Only if we buy the raw materials for $30 will we get the required quantity of material after shrinkage. So always when there is a shrinkage of 20%, so we have to equate this to 80%. And then we have to calculate 100%. That is how much more quantity of the raw materials we should buy. So that's the calculation which has been done here. 24 divided by 80 into 100, or we have to buy raw materials worth $30. So that was the first element of cost. Now we go to the next item of cost. What is the next item? Direct labor cost. They have said that direct labor hours required per unit is 1 hour. So we make a note of that. Direct labor cost, it is 1 hour multiplied by rate per hour. So, but we don't know the rate. They have asked us to calculate the direct labor rate per hour. That is a missing figure. So we will just put that as question mark. Now, what have they said? The target cost gap should be 0. So on top of target cost gap, we can write 0. Okay. So if the target cost gap is 0, it means that the target cost and the estimated cost will be same. So estimated cost will also be $40. So the total of the estimated cost is $40. So that is what I have indicated here. Out of which we already know that $30 is relating to direct material. So what is a balancing figure? Balancing figure is a direct labor cost, $10. So what is the rate per hour? 1 hour multiplied by dash is equal to 10. It is 10 divided by 1 or $10. That's the rate per hour. So that's the final answer. Direct labor rate per hour amounts to $10 per hour. So whenever you get MCQ on target costing, you arrange the details from the question in this format. So it becomes very easy to find out the missing figure. Now moving to question number 2, which statements are true? It is difficult to introduce target costing in the service sector because 1, it is difficult to determine a market-driven selling price. Introduction of services occur less frequently. Major cost is salaries, and it is difficult to reduce salaries. 4th one, its features of simultaneous, heterogeneous, intangibility, perishability makes it distinct from manufacturing sector. So we have to see which all statements are true. So the first statement, it is difficult to determine a market-driven selling price. Now, suppose we are going to open a restaurant. Now, can we exactly determine a market-driven selling price for the dishes that we provide in our restaurant? Because services are not exactly comparable. The taste of our dish might be different from other restaurants or other hotels. The ambience that is given will be different. So it is not as easy to determine a market-driven selling price when compared to the manufacturing sector. Now, the second point, introduction of services occur less frequently. That is also true because in the manufacturing sector, we are always updating and adding new features. For example, for the mobile phone, because of the advancement of technology, we have additional features coming up more often. But in the service sector, there is limited scope of adding new features, like a robot delivering the food in a restaurant. That is less frequent. So we don't have updations coming up in the service sector as such. So that statement is true. Now, the third one, major cost is salary, and it is difficult to reduce salaries. That is also true because in the service sector, it is people who are managing the service sector, right? For example, a hospital. If we were trying to reduce cost and we reduce the salary of the doctors or the nurses, then the experienced one will immediately leave. So we are left with inexperienced people, which means that our demand will be affected. So we cannot cut down on their salary. So the major cost is salaries, and it is difficult to reduce salaries. That is also true. Now, the fourth statement, its features of simultaneous, heterogeneous, intangibility, perishability makes it distinct from manufacturing sector. Now, SHIP. Now, that's the acronym that I always tell to my students for remembering the features of the service sector. S for simultaneous, H for heterogeneous, I for intangibility, and P for perishability. These are the 4 features of the service sector. Now, we will take one by one. Simultaneous. What do you mean by simultaneous? The production of the service and the consumption of the service takes place at the same time. In a hospital, for kidney transplantation or for any other operation, you cannot fix a target cost as such because there might be complications and there could be cost escalations. So they could always employ the cost plus pricing. They could have a target cost, but there are difficulties. It's not as easy to implement as in the manufacturing sector. The next feature is heterogeneous. What do you mean by heterogeneous? Heterogeneous means may not be of the same quality at all times. Now, suppose you are going in for a coaching class. Suppose you are attending the class in the morning. The teacher will be really fresh and she might be entertaining your doubts. But if you are attending the evening class, maybe she will be tired and she may not entertain the doubts as such. So the quality of the service will vary. So we cannot have a target cost for the morning batch and a target cost for an evening batch. That is just not possible. It is not like a product which is manufactured. It is people who are involved. They are prone to make mistakes. The third feature is intangibility. What do you mean by intangible? Intangible means these are things which you cannot see and touch. If it's a physical product, you can actually see the product and you can actually see what are all the components that make those products. So we can immediately do a value analysis or a value engineering. But if it's a service, to actually see what are all the components which is comprising the service. The value analysis or value engineering itself may not be employed as effectively as a manufacturing sector. And the last one is perishability. What do you mean by perishable? You cannot store the service. Like you have a stock of finished goods. Can you have a stock of the service which you can carry forward next year? Once it is gone, it is lost. So next year, when the demand is very high, you cannot save for the future and you cannot meet the demand expectation. So there are a lot of difficulties involved in the service sector when compared to the manufacturing sector. So all the features, simultaneous, heterogeneous, intangibility and perishability, all makes it difficult for target costing to be introduced in the service sector in an efficient manner. We could introduce it to a limited extent, but not to that extent like we are implementing in the manufacturing sector. So what is the right answer? All these four statements are right. So the right answer is option.